Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we have Kendra Jonas on board. Kendra Jonas is an author, website designer, artist, public speaker, and a channeler for extraterrestrial intelligence. Kendra attributes her interest in higher consciousness and metaphysical realities to her lifetime of encounters with ETs and light beings, one of which gave her the 7 Principles of I Am, which became the material for her book entitled The Link. Kendra's long journeys stems from childhood, which included both physical and non-physical out-of-body encounters with ETs. Kendra participated in the Grey ET Human Hybrid program and had many other experiences that opened her up to becoming a trance channel for a light being named Melody, Kendra's spirit guide who is linked to the 5th dimensional collective consciousness and beyond. Kendra lives in Oregon with her husband and 3 sons, where she runs a website design business, continues to write, and channels Melody for both individuals and groups. Thank you so much for coming on, Kendra.
Thank you, Yannick. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love your channel, by the way. It's great.
Yay! Thank you so much. You've been through a lot. I'm looking forward to this. So your experiences started off as a child.
Yeah, I'm a lifelong experiencer with particularly contact with the gray extraterrestrials. Didn't realize that was what was happening as a child. And I had a normal childhood. I mean, I come from like a nuclear family. You know, I have a younger brother, mom and dad. Dad had his own business and worked from home. And we did very well. And it was a good childhood, you know, but there were some peculiar things that had happened that I didn't really realize until I began to have my full awakening or full awareness that I was having contact with ETs, which actually that didn't happen until till I was 22 to be exact. Oh. So, and then the memories surfaced, and then it was like, oh, okay, going back into childhood, I can then identify with a few encounters and things that happened even going back then. So yeah, I grew up in Oregon. I've been I'm a native Oregonian. And so I've lived kind of a low-key life. I mean, I didn't like travel out of the country. I wasn't even a Star Trek fan. I didn't like have a basis for what my life was going to be like. There was no yardstick for me to measure, like, you know, what was about to unfold. So it was a major journey for me to try to connect the dots and uncover all this. And so I have a lot of information that I'm really excited to share because it's been decades. It's been decades of experiences and me kind of learning along the way at what this is all about. So I reserved coming out and talking about it because I needed to have all the answers first. I needed to know what was happening. And now I feel like I do have a really good understanding about all of this. I have, you know, I got validation and evidence along the way. So yeah, just going back into the childhood times. One of the memories that sticks out is me and my brother were going to the store for my mom. He's 4 years younger than me, and I was about 11 at that time. He was like 7 or 8. And she gave us some money to go buy hot dogs. And she said, I remember clearly what she said. She's like, just make sure you get the good hot dogs. Don't get the cheap ones. Get Ballpark Franks or something like that. And so she gives us like $5, I think. And she says, and you can get some candy, whatever you want with the change. And we're like, yeah, that's so exciting, you know. So we lived about 2 blocks from the store. It was walking distance. And my brother and I walked down to the store and get our little bag of candy, have the hot dogs. And on our way back, we noticed something very unusual. On the corner of that road that we had just crossed to get to the store, right, the first house on the corner coming back to our house was a light green house with an arborvitae edge that barricaded the street there. And there were beer cans strategically placed all throughout the front yard. They were all about 1 foot apart, all in these rows, and all the beer cans were face up, so the labels were all facing up. It wasn't like random. They weren't scattered. It was all even. And they went all the way out into the street. And we did not see these going down to the store. We would have noticed something like that. It was just bizarre. So we see this on the way home. And being a kid, I saw an opportunity, because even back then in Oregon, the bottle return was 5 cents to take back a can. We were like one of the first states that had a bottle return with a decent price payment. And I'm just a kid, and the cans are right there on the street, even some of them. And I said to my brother, hey, let's pick up some of these and go back to the store and we can get some more candy. And I noticed that there was no one home. The house was dark and there was a carport. There was no car in the driveway or anything. So I was so tempted. I just remember being overcome with this temptation to gather up these cans as fast as I can. And my brother's doing the same thing. And we're trying to put them in our shirts and carry them back to the store. And what happens is there's a memory break there. So my brother and I both remember up to that point. And then all of a sudden being absolutely terrified. We don't know what we're scared of. There was nobody home. There was nobody that yelled at us for doing this. There was no, dog that came after us, nothing like that. But we just drop the cans and we run home as fast as we can. My brother following behind me. I'm gripping that bag with the hot dogs and the loose changes jingling in the bag as I'm running, and my heart is just pounding. We're just terrified. And there's the missing part there of the memory. So later on, as I got into adulthood and started having contact with the Greys, they filled me in on the missing pieces, or somehow my memory opened up just because I had more contact. So something opened up, and I remembered that that we were kind of like the temptation kept driving us closer and closer to the house, as we were collecting more cans, until we reached the side of the house between the arborvitae and the side of the house. And there were 2 gray ETs there that greeted us and that took our measurements. I remember it was like a light physical exam. I remember one of them measured me with a measuring tape or something. And then I remember being measured around my waist, and he touched my wrist. I think he took my pulse. So it just felt like a light physical exam. And he did the same thing to my brother. And that was the piece that we couldn't remember. But interestingly, when I did have the full memory, I brought it up to my brother again. He absolutely remembered everything too, except for that part, and including the labels on the beer cans that said Hams. He said that I even remember the brand of Hams. And he said, I don't know what it was, but something scared us. It was so weird how we ran home like that. And we never mentioned a word to Mom or anything about it. So that was interesting. Yeah. And then, a few other things I remember, again, had memory later of my dad and I looking through the family room window. It was a pretty large window out to the backyard. And so you could see a large landscape looking out. And there was a bright green boomerang type object, very luminescent and bright, that flew from one side of the house to the other, kind of going over, and then it came back around. And I remember looking at my dad, and he had this strange look on his face, almost like he was under a hypnotic state, kind of blank, looked very weird. But I remember turning to him and saying, Dad, they're here for me. And I don't remember being taken at that point or what happened, but again, I needed validation to see if my dad remembered this experience. So as soon as I remembered it, I called my dad on the phone. I said, do you remember seeing a green boomerang object with me? And he goes, oh yeah. He says, I remember you mentioned something about that you said it went from southeast to northwest and then again to southeast. And I said, no, Dad, I wouldn't have known the direction that it went. I was a kid. I didn't know my north from my south or whatever orientation wise. So for him to have said it like that means that he saw it with me. Yeah. And I knew that. And so I was starting to get validation as my memories were surfacing. I got validation from some of my family members, even though they didn't have full conscious recall. And they didn't have the level of experiences that I had. There was no doubt that this was really kind of happening to me. It was kind of isolating that way, in a sense. But how
about your brother? Did he have a lot of contact as much as you had, or was it really localized to when he was with you?
I would say, yeah, because I've talked to him over the years, and shared some stuff, and no, he doesn't really seem to be having what I have.
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
Okay.
as far as he knows too. So,
Okay.
um, so then in third grade, I remember I had an invisible friend for a short period of time in the third grade, and I found this interesting. And at first, I didn't think anything of it, but then as I compared it to the experiences I had with the Greys, I'm realizing how similar this invisible friend looked to the Greys. I'm like, well, he had this glowing luminescence around him, which the Greys have. He had the same kind of similar features, about the same size. The Greys that visit me are 3.5 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
This being was about that size, and he flew around me, kind of like had wings. And what happened was, in the third grade, I had a teacher that was, I don't know, she just didn't like me. Whenever we were doing reading, she would call on me, and I got so nervous to be called on. It just became this pattern where whenever I was to read something, she would then ask me right away, what did you just read? She was testing my comprehension constantly. And I got so nervous that I couldn't remember what I read because I was focused on every word and if I pronounced it right. So I got more and more anxious. And then around that same time, my very best friend I met in second grade started to gang up sort of with, she became friends with this kind of other child that was a bully in school. So the two of them would tease me at recess, and I just became more and more withdrawn. Yeah. With those two things going on. And so all of a sudden this being just entered my life and started playing with me and talking with me. And I felt so good. I just remember feeling like, wow, like there was information I was getting that was just really beautiful. I felt unconditionally loved. And I had fun. I didn't even care anymore that my friend was, bullying. I didn't care about the school. And then one day, I was at the drinking fountain, and my friend said to me, Kendra, who are you talking to? And I guess I was talking to the invisible friend. And I said, oh, that's Anthony Angel. That's what I called him. Oh. And she said, you're talking to an invisible friend, and it's Anthony Angel. And she said, well, if you want to keep playing with me and be my friend, you have to stop talking to Anthony Angel, she says. And I remember feeling like really sad. No okay. Yeah, like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? So I went to Anthony Angel and I said, my friend doesn't want to play with me because I'm talking to you. And he said, your friends are very important to you right now. And it's time that you go back and, start playing with them again. And I'll be back, and, don't worry about it. I'll be back again someday, and just go on, be a kid, And that was it. He sort of left, and everything kind of got better after that with school and everything. I got very good grades. The last, was a straight A student in sixth grade. I had no more reading issues that I remember. It was just sort of with that one teacher moving forward. So yeah, it was really interesting to look back on that now. Nice. Nice. Yeah. I had other things like I would ask, and I didn't grow up religiously. We didn't belong to any church. The only church exposure I had was maybe when I was very young through my grandmother before she died, took me to Sunday school and a few friends, but I didn't grow up religiously, but I was very open spiritually always. And I remember being in my room and saying, Jesus, will you come and energize me? I would ask for this even as a little kid, like 5 years old or 6. And I would get these tingles that would start at the crown, and this energy would just fill me up, and it just felt amazing. And I could just call on this anytime I wanted. I'd get this visceral response from it. And then the last thing I remember that was really cool from childhood was one time this big bright light just filled my room. It just like this round light that just got bigger and bigger, filled my room, and there was this voice speaking through it. And it was one morning, and it woke me up, and it said, it was very soft male voice, but almost like a whisper and very soothing. And the voice said, you're going to have a difficult time ahead of you, but I'm here to guide you, protect you, and most of all, give you lots of love. And then this ball of light just sort of started to kind of get smaller and smaller until it just eventually faded away. And that was that whole thing and that happened. And I just kind of laid there like, well, that's weird. That was very beautiful and lovely, and didn't think anything of it. But that week was just a horrific week that was coming. It was a really difficult time for me. And there was a boy in my school that I went through all of grade school, all of middle school with his sister. We were the same age. And I dated her brother my sophomore year. And at this point, I'm 18, so we weren't still dating or anything, but we had at that time. And I was getting ready to go to University of Oregon. I was about to leave for college. And then I got news that he was killed in a construction accident. He was working over the summer, and it was a terrible thing, and a huge loss for our community and everything when that happened. And so I was grieving that. And then that same week, my dog starts having heart failure. I was very in love with my dog. She followed me around everywhere, and little Yorkshire Terrier. Oh. And thought she was going to die, and she survived that. And then that same week, my mother tells me that she and my dad are probably going to be getting divorced. And when I came back from college, they may not still be together. And that surprised me because they didn't really fight. I didn't think there were problems. Yeah, it was kind of weird to hear that. So that kind of made me reflect. I thought, wow, that voice, that message, it knew. And who was that? And so I started wondering. I thought, whether we call it, an ET or God or whatever, an angel, whatever that was, what I think was most amazing was that it knew the future, that time was somehow removed, and it knew, he knew. So that was unforgettable, one of those unforgettable things that kind of opened me up even more for what was to come. And then I guess going into my adult experiences, that's kind of what I remember from childhood. And then did you have any questions about that before I?
Well, just to add to that, regarding the voices, in 2008, I believe, when I was sleeping, a female voice spoke maybe like an inch away from my ear. And she told me, now this wasn't internal, like telepathic, it was really external. And she said that I'll be an uncle and my parents and grandparents. And 3 months later, my brother tells me that his wife's with child. And that was his firstborn. And he had loads of trouble trying to get her pregnant. They tried everything, in vitro, hormones. They gave her too many hormones. Her belly swelled up, became like this big. Wow. She almost died because of it. Oh no! I stayed maybe a week or two at the hospital just to get the belly down, and so we thought my brother would never have children. And out of the blue, I get this voice telling me that I'm going to be an uncle.
Wow, that's interesting.
So there's a story regarding a female that's been following me all my life, and that's what I wanted to add. So
I'm glad.
It's totally normal.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So let's continue with your story then.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, wonderful. But it's so nice when, experiencers can connect and share. That's so important. And that's why your channel is so important, because we learn from each other, and there's always similarities too. And even though we feel different when it's happening. So yeah, as a young adult, so I go off to University of Oregon for a couple years. That I don't remember much happening those first 2 years. It was things got really active after I left there. I took a year off to work before I started at Portland State, in which I finished and got a sociology degree from there. But so I remember I was looking for work, and so I went to the mall because I just moved to Beaverton and was settling in, and so I went to the mall, and the first place I looked, I had my resume with me. First place I looked was right there on the left. It was Lens Crafters, and I thought, oh, I'll never get a job here because I'm not an optician. I don't have skills, but heck, I'm just gonna leave my resume here and keep going down the line until I'll probably get a job down at Jamba Juice or whatever, is what I was thinking, because I was a college student. And so I go into Lens Crafters, and the assistant manager is there, and she looks at my resume and she goes, oh, come on back. Let's have an interview. go back there, have an interview, and she hires me on the spot.
Wow.
Which was really weird because that's never happened. That's unusual. I didn't even know if they were even looking for help. So that was unusual. But the reason I'm saying this is because I know, looking back, that the Greys absolutely wanted me to be there, because there were very pivotal people that I met from LensCrafters when I was there, who were my support system moving forward. And extremely important that I meet them. So that's why that happened. In fact, I met my first husband there. He was working there. He became my fiance. So we started to have a life together. We ended up moving in together after I was there, like maybe a year or something. And then things started getting really active with ET experiences. So, and like I said, they were waiting for me to get my support system ready, or they were helping with that on the background. So we moved in together. And the first thing I noticed with us as a couple was we had the same dream one time. And it was unbelievable. The dream felt different when I had it. It was very, very long, and it was just unusual. And so what I dreamed was, in our apartment, I dreamed that objects started shaking by themselves. So kind of a paranormal thing. And then I dreamed that I get into this boat, like like a canoe or a rowboat. And there were 4 or 5 people boarding the boat that I didn't know who they were. So it was weird. And then we took off, kind of going to the left towards this mountainous region off of a sandy beach. Next thing I know, I'm back at the apartment where we lived, and this man is chasing me, and then he walks right through me. So he was like this ghost that just walked through me, and that was just so weird. Oh, and also there was a lamp that was tilted on its side, like 45-degree angle, not falling to the left or right, not shaking, but just like sitting there. I was looking at this lamp like, why isn't the lamp tipping over? What is it doing like that? So just bizarre, very bizarre. And then at the end of that, I see a UFO in that dream that had 8 sides. It was very unique, 8-sided object that was well lit with this red outline. And then I woke up and I just laid there and I said, wow. And I said to my fiance that morning, I said, I just had the weirdest dream. And he's laying there and he said, I just had the weirdest dream too. And I said, you did? What did you dream? And so we started talking about it. I couldn't believe it. So he tells me in his dream that in the apartment, the refrigerator was shaking by itself. So he saw one object shaking, but again, things were shaking. He said that he also boarded a rowboat with 4 or 5 people that he didn't know. We didn't see each other in this boat, but he saw strangers and it also veered off to the left towards a mountainous region off of a sandy beach. He also said that he dreamed that he was, when he got back to the apartment, it wasn't a man that chased him or walked through him, but he felt threatened or chased by a little boy. And then he also said he saw a UFO in the dream. I said, wait a minute. Don't tell me what that UFO looked like. I said, I want you to draw it, and I'm going to draw it, because I knew if we had the same UFO, this was an 8-sided object that I've never even heard of such a thing. So I asked him to draw it, and I drew it. And sure enough, and I made it mine all colorful because he's not really into drawing. So, but you could see he drew this object. It had 8 sides.
Did you keep it?
I did. Yes, I do have it in my journal, actually.
Oh, can you send it to me?
Sure. I'll send you that. Yeah. And that was like, wow, this is so weird. We had the same dream. How is that possible? So my reality started to get a little, dent in it, or my sense of reality started to have a crack, I guess I should say. And so, but looking back now, so this was the Greys' way of starting to get infused into my life in a gentle way. They were trying to not be so like, okay, let's just get right into this. They were preparing me. So we started to experience some strange paranormal things in that apartment. Objects started to shake, like what we experienced in the dream. So like the blinds one day in the bedroom were just rattling, and this gust of wind blew through and came around the corner and like slammed the bathroom door shut, but the window was shut. So that kind of stuff, that happened. The TV would turn off and on by itself. We came back one time from having dinner with a couple of friends, and my first husband, he took off his shoes, and they were kind of sitting in between us, and just one of his shoes started tapping back and forth like this, and the other one just sat there like there was no vibration in the house. And I'm sitting here, it's happening right between us. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on with your shoe, you know? And it just like puzzles the brain. And then another time he was doing dishes and I was facing him, and the cupboard was open behind him, and a Tupperware lid just floated out and hovered right next to him, and then slammed down on the ground. And he startled. He said, where did that come from? Yeah. Whoa. And I saw it happen, and he saw it too. And and I actually talked to him 2 weekends ago, and I kind of refreshed as I was preparing for this. I said, do you remember some of these things? And he does. He remembers a few of these things. So it's nice to keep the validation, you know, of what you experience with other people. But really, in reality, you know, they were really there for me a lot. So in the early part of it, my first husband was involved in these ways because they were, you know, coming to us in this way. But then it became more and more contact with just me. And so let's see, if I mentioned, I'm just kind of going on my notes here so I make sure I didn't forget something. Oh yeah, and then one time this object, we were just sitting talking on the couch, and one time this spinning object just took shape and just started spinning right in front of us, and it went and it just shot up through the ceiling. It came out of nowhere, and he vividly remembers that. That was very interesting to witness that too. So yeah, unusual things were happening. We felt like we were being watched. Just like there was a presence there. And then then the next stage happened where on October 24th, 1991. So this was the day when I absolutely knew I was visited by an extraterrestrial. And it's because there was physical evidence left behind, and there was no denying it. So what happened was, and bear in mind, this is October 24th, 1991. There was no internet. There was nothing really in our culture really that talked about the Greys. This was a very long time ago, before people knew about them. Yeah. So this was all new to me. So what happened was I was sleeping, and all of a sudden I'm paralyzed. I can't move. And I see, but my eyes are open because I can see what's happening around me. And I see this being walk through the wall, kind of where the window is there. He just kind of comes through the wall. He's only about 3.5 feet tall, so I don't really feel threatened because he's so small. And he's wearing this white lab coat, and I see, you know, kind of this big head and these swoopy black eyes. But I don't think alien. I think, oh, I must be dreaming about a Chinese doctor entering my room. I called him a Chinese doctor. I didn't know what he was. But he comes in, and he kind of gets behind me a bit, so he's kind of back behind my head. And I see from the corner of my eye this little instrument about this long, silver type of scraping instrument. And he tells me telepathically, I hear him in my head, he says, this will only take a minute. And he kind of flitted around. He kind of spoke quickly and moved quickly. I remember that. He said, this will only take a minute. We do this all the time, but we just need a skin sample from you, you know. And, and the next thing I know, he's just scraping 3 times right underneath my eye, and it really hurt. I remember feeling pain and saying, ouch, you're hurting me. And he said, it's all right, it's all right. And he finished his procedure, and he said it won't leave a scar any bigger than a chickenpox scar, like, because I had the chickenpox pretty bad when I was a kid, and I still have some scars on my face. And I thought, how does he know I had the chickenpox? Who is this guy? How does he know me so well about that? That's weird. And I also thought it was weird that he said we, and it was just him in the room. He said, we do this all the time. And let's see, something like he said we a couple of times when he was referring to himself. So there was this collective mindset that I noticed as well, which was interesting. And then he just turned around and he walked out the door the same way he came in. And I just kind of lay there like, that's weird. I didn't still feel the pain from the scrape. So somehow they must have done something to take that away. And I just kind of like, well, I just went back to sleep. I didn't know what to think of that whole thing. It was just, it didn't freak me out at that point yet, because I just cast it off as maybe a dream, right? So then I get up in the morning to take a shower. And when I look in the mirror right before I'm getting in the shower, I see, wow, there's a red boil type thing, like about the size of almost like a dime size, pretty large right there. And right below that was a fresh, fleshy scoop mark right underneath that. And I was like, whoa. And I remembered that experience that I would like to call a dream, but it wasn't a dream. So that was like my waking up moment when I was like, oh my goodness. And things just kept happening from there. Just a lot of stuff after that. Sometimes as much as a couple times a week or every other day. And then maybe there'd be a 2-week break, and then there'd be clusters, you know, of experiences on and on and on for years. It happened. So
would it be always the same thing?
There was a combination of like these medical type things, and also very much like learning experiences, a lot of stuff to do with that was out of body, educational, evolutionary stuff, which didn't even really make sense until later when I saw the chronology and could say, okay, they're definitely, you know, working with me. They're teaching me things and I'm evolving because of them. But it took a while. There was a lot of trauma that was associated with them coming. And I did develop PTSD from the constant, you know, physical being taken, not understanding it. So going back to the lens crafters thing, what really helped was, when I went to work shortly thereafter with that visit, I remember going into the break room, and one of the people that I worked with happened to be reading Bud Hopkins' book, The Intruders. And there wasn't much literature out there. I mean, this was 1991, so I think Whitley Strieber's book was published in that, but I wasn't reading any of that stuff. I didn't know who was visiting me at that time or what was happening. And so this gal that I worked with again at Lens Crafters helped me realize what was happening, because I asked her, I said, what are you reading? I recognized the little guy on the cover of her book, and it looked just like the guy that came into my room. And she explained to me, well, this is there's a hypnotherapist that works with people that are taken, that have medical procedures done by extraterrestrials. And I blurted out, oh my God, I think that's happening to me. I said, and she says, and then she answered me, she says, oh no, not you too. And I said, well, is this happening to you also? And she says, yes, it's happening to me and my kids. And I wanted to talk about it at that point. I was like blown away. But she was very closed off and scared, and she did not want to talk about her stuff. But she said, I'll give you the phone number of somebody that belongs to PUFOG, Portland UFO Group, that you could talk to. And that was huge, because when things got really weird, I wouldn't have had support otherwise. And so I became very good friends with the gal that I could talk to anytime I got freaked out. I literally could call her at 3 a.m. sometimes and talk to her. So I had my support network, you know, already there. Thank goodness. So let's see. So December 1st, 1991, they did this ear implant thing where a being came into the room, same guy, you know, or one of the same guys, the little grays that came in, and they wanted me to imagine that I was camping and this little earwig like crawled into my ear. They showed me a scene like that. And then I became paralyzed, and they show me this little thing that's about 1 inch long that looked like a plastic beetle. It was white, looked like a fishing lure type of thing, but no hook on it, but just this little plastic white insect looking thing that wasn't alive. Well, I don't know. And all of it, they put this thing in my ear, and it squirms all the way deep into my ear. And I can't move. I'm paralyzed, and I'm feeling this thing go into my ear. And it's the worst feeling to not be able to move, and something's in your ear that deep. It just gives you the willies, like you can't imagine that feeling. And It stays in there for maybe like 5 seconds, and then it comes out. And then they go to the other side and they do the same thing. And I remember the minute that it came out and they released the paralysis, then I just got this shiver all over, like, oh God, it was just this awful feeling. But what was interesting is after that, I began to have really interesting things with my ears. High-pitched sounds sometimes at odd times. I began to associate it with like getting messages. I would get this thumping or this pulsating, fluttering kind of experience, really loud sometimes. When somebody would say something significant, my ear would start acting up. It was like I was getting signals or something. And they later told me that that was a way that they were communicating with me. So I wouldn't like hear their voice or something. I would just get a high-pitched ringing or a fluttery thing, where I think information was being transmitted that way, but I wasn't cognitive of what the message was. But very much with my ears after that. Let's see. So December 7th, 1991. So things are just moving very rapidly. There's so much that happened in between that it would take a month to probably cover everything. So, yeah. But I was introduced to my hybrid son. They began taking me, and I was seeing a lot of these hybrid children where they were mixed, part of us and part of these gray ETs. And these were just amazing children. Absolutely super highly intelligent, beautiful. I can't even describe what it's like to be in their presence. It's just amazing. They're angelic is how I experienced them. And then so I met my little son, and I felt right away he was my child, just right away. He was about 5 or 6 years old. I met lots of my children. I remember a 13-year-old daughter. I remember a 2 to 3-year-old daughter that she actually had autism. She wasn't able to speak.
Oh.
They were concerned about that. They had me visit her a couple times. And then there was a baby about 8 months or something like that. And then Daniel, I named this one Daniel, who was, because they kept having me visit him the most. So I had multiple visits with him and began to have a relationship and a bond with him. He showed me like his school, where he went. There was a very collective upbringing with these kids. They didn't have like mom and dad like we have here. There was all the hybrid adults were sort of working together to teach these children and nurture these children. And I just remember just being just in awe and in love with this little boy, and grieving a lot when there was times in between when I couldn't see him. I hadn't had any kids yet. So this was very new to me.
Were you able to touch him? Touch your children?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember just holding him, and he was so skinny. And I remember going, are you getting enough to eat? Are you hungry? Just very frail and skinny. But that's just how they were. And when I'd say, this is your mommy, I love you so much, he kind of just looked like a little bit puzzled, like, what does that mean? Or what's mom? But he just really was taken to me. I mean, we really bonded, and it was just a really amazing time.
Did they have the normal wraparound eyes, teardrop eyes? What did they look like?
His eyes looked more human-like. It was more like he had a really large head, thin hair, and this very spindly body. But there were so many differences in the hybrid children. I've seen some that have larger eyes, some that have like this glow around them that look even more angelic looking. So there's a real variety. Yeah, but I saw so many of them. And so I believe it's because they're taking our genetics, but at different degrees, and maybe even mixing them with other ET races. We don't know for sure if they're just mixing with the grays, or are they bringing in Pleiades? But definitely, absolutely beyond a doubt, I have seen new races of beings off planet. I've met many of them. They really do exist. They have a life off planet, and they're interacting with some of us. It's
have you seen, so you were I guess they showed you the final product, so but have you seen any birthing chambers? Because sometimes you've got fetuses within jars, and you've got walls and walls of of
Yeah, that
birthing chambers.
I think I remember seeing something like that at one time. It's very familiar, and they came and they did take there was this extraction that they did at one point with me, where it was like this little box like this and this, and I drew a picture of that. I didn't actually share that one, but it was a box with a like a syringe type of thing, like, you know, I don't know, that came down. And interestingly, when the things like this occurred, there were like robot beings that came and did this. The Greys didn't even want to do this kind of thing. I remember they were like these robots that just came. They put this thing over my belly. They pushed it down and like it pulled something out of me into this box, and they were off. And it took just a few seconds. It was very painful when it happened, but I'm pretty sure that was an extraction, either a small embryo or something. Wow. I don't know, but they had to have gotten my ovum at one point throughout my life to have suddenly where I have all these children with them that I didn't know I had. So
you didn't feel any phantom pregnancies? You were never sick?
Well, yeah, there is an account. There is something that I journaled about, something like that, where I thought maybe that happened. But otherwise, I had more like menstrual problems, a lot of like I had endometriosis, I had a lot of pain and stuff growing up with that. But no, nothing like where I like missed periods. So I think they were doing a lot of this early on, maybe with me, you know, and taking them and hybridizing them in petri dishes or however they do it.
Yeah.
And so their technology is so much more advanced than ours. I mean, what our doctors do today with in vitro is probably very different from how they do it. Yeah. So, yeah, they showed me they're also doing this with animals. They showed me various animal species that were hybridized, which was really interesting. I saw a robin that looked very different. They took me to like almost these animal farms type places. I saw cattle, horses, super intelligent, super loving, almost like a cow that's more like your dog, or with even human genetics in them. They would look you in the eyes and want to kiss you or lick you and communicate telepathically. I mean, I was seeing cattle like this and horses, just highly evolved. And I saw a flamingo that it was partially invisible. It's so bizarre. So it had like one wing that you could see, and another side, the wing wasn't there. It looked invisible. One leg that was there and another leg gone. And it was just parts of it were missing to the visual spectrum. But when the ET shined a special light on the flamingo, you could see the whole flamingo.
What? Wow.
So it was really weird. So it was something interdimensional going on there that they were doing. And some people might think, oh, this is horrible. You know, they're genetically altering life. This is wrong. And they're playing God and stuff. But that's why I want to come forward and like go all the way through the end, because I think it'll help people see that there's really something positive in all this. Let's see. Okay, so they show me on December 12th, 1991, they show me my son Daniel's birth certificate. And I named him Daniel because I was listening to Elton John one day, that song, Daniel, waving goodbye in a plane. And I was grieving. And I thought, well, that's a good name to call him. So, but they told me that his name's not Daniel. They said his name is Kayat. And they showed me on the birth certificate, it's spelled Cayatte, and that he was born on May 8th. And I was like kind of confused about all this at the time. They start showing me images of my mom, my mom being pregnant with my brother, but my brother's still living. And when she's pregnant with my brother, she's with her second husband, not my dad. And they're showing me, you know, kind of trying to introduce me to the idea that the soul can incarnate again, and that your mom is having your brother again, but with a different man. So they were sending me information, getting me ready for what was to come. And this will make sense more as I go. It's just hard to kind of say it all at once. So I'm just going to kind of keep going with this. So they're showing me this. And then they showed me this triangle that was intersecting with another triangle, because I kept asking them, why have you picked me? What's going on? I asked and asked and asked, and they kept giving me little bits of information. I see this triangle intersecting, and then they show me this beautiful hybrid female ET with beautiful lockets of blonde hair, big sweeping blue eyes, super high intelligence, incredible abilities. And she's married to this ape-like Neanderthal type man, and they're having children together. And I thought, well, that's like Beauty and the Beast. So they kept showing me this hybrid thing. They're trying to show me that there's there's more going on here than what we think. And okay, so I'm not sure if I should get into then when I get pregnant. Maybe I should just skip this stuff, and I don't know what order to explain this. So yeah, so people don't forget this part. So I'm just going to say that a couple years after I was shown all this with Daniel, or Kayet, I end up being pregnant. I get married to my fiance at that time. This is about, let's see, so 1994, I got pregnant with him. So 3 years after, I'm having these experiences with Daniel, and they show me this reincarnation type of a scene with using my brother as a surrogate in the example. I get pregnant, and the day that I conceive, they come to me and they tell me that I'm pregnant. And so I knew the moment it happened, and they said, you're going to have a child that's part you, part your husband, and part us. They tell me this. And all kinds of, experiences happen where they kept an eye on me, I guess I should say, while I was pregnant. So I have a normal pregnancy, except that he's breech. He can't turn. And the reason he can't turn is because his head is so large. And this is my firstborn son that I'm talking about. So when I have him, and it's interesting, I forgot all about this birth certificate I was talking about, where they call him Kayet and his birthday's in May. I forget all of this. This is journaled 3 years ago, and I don't even look at my journals. So when my first husband and I are picking names, I just have the baby book out and we're reading names. And I said, how about Brett? And that stuck with him. He said, oh yeah, let's call him Brett. So we named him Brett. And it's interesting because it's a little bit like Kayet. It has a T sound at the end. I thought that was interesting. And he was born May 15th, not May 8th. But, the thing of it is, the visits with Daniel or Kayet stopped at that time. I realized, looking back, that he reincarnated to be my first son in this life. And that's why they kept having me visit him over and over again. And when we bonded, I got very familiar with his personality. So I started to recognize it in him as a earth child. So he came here with special abilities. He does have gray ET DNA in him. There's no doubt. When he was born, the doctor said, your son, his head is really big. We need to examine him for, is it called encephalitis, where the brain is swollen? They weren't sure because it was so large. And they said, no, he's normal. Everything looks great. But the doctor said, but his head is very large, bigger than I've ever seen. I said, how large are you talking about? And he says, like 2 inches. He says, it's like, we don't see that. It's very unusual. And I knew why, but I couldn't say anything. But he was putting together really difficult puzzles. We had a United States map, a puzzle, 50 pieces. He was 18 months old, and he could put that thing together super fast. I mean, his mind was just sharp as anything. But there were other things that he was slower developmentally, like learning to walk. He was a little bit delayed. And speech, he wasn't learning the simple words. He started speaking in complex sentences instead of doing the gradual kind of the way they evolve with language. So there was just interesting things that I was noticing, because I had a daycare at that time too, so I could see the development of other kids. And we had 6-year-olds that couldn't put together that puzzle, and my 18-month-old was doing that. So I knew, I was like, okay, this is really showing up to be real, and today he's 26 now, and he's very good at memorizing things. He taught himself Japanese as a second language. He's really fluent, and he memorized 2,500 kanji characters in one summer. Just like,
Wow. I
really.
tried to learn Japanese.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did the 10-day course, and well, sadly I had to quit like halfway because I was about to have an open heart surgery. So I know how difficult it is to learn Japanese.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I guess he's really fluent, because a Japanese friend of mine listened to him and said, yeah, he doesn't even sound like he has an accent. He's very clear, his abilities. So, yeah, so it was, I got validation that this really happened, that, I'm not crazy. And like I said, I went through that time where it was really scary at first. All the abductions and all of this was frightening. So I developed PTSD and didn't have the diagnosis yet, but I went to a psychiatric nurse practitioner because I was having such a hard time, just the body, just the constant abductions, the constant stuff, and not feeling like you have control. I went through all of that, so if there are people out there experiencing this, I can so relate to the trauma part of this. And I spent about 8 years with this therapist, and I ended up taking antidepressants for that period of time because it was just, I was shaking. And when I came into her office, I was shaking so much. She says, and she evaluated me, and she said, well, based on the tests and how you answered the questions and what I'm observing is you have PTSD. She says, what happened to you? It's evident you have some kind of trauma. And she says the score of my PTSD chart was like equivalent to somebody that went through the Vietnam War, that kind of war veteran. She said it was severe, and I knew it was, and I was holding all this in. I couldn't tell anybody. I had, that one friend I could call at 3 a.m, but there was no internet or any way to know what was going on. I was really alone. And I finally kind of started to tell her little by little what was happening. And it was scary because she was right next to the Salem Mental Hospital there. And I thought, oh, she's going to think I'm a loony and lock me up. And she didn't. She had 30 years of experience as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And she said, you know what, I believe you. And she says, just for the record, I'm not going to even record the stuff you're telling me because I don't want it to get into the wrong hands in your file. But it opened her up, and then she started learning about things, and stuff started disclosing more and more. Ancient aliens came on TV eventually, and so it helped a lot. But it was like, it was also validating to know that I wasn't crazy, based on an outsider that wasn't in the UFO community or whatever could say, okay, you really did have something happen to you. So let's see, what was the next thing that happened? Okay, I was introduced to my biological ET mother. So I started to learn that I was also a hybrid. It wasn't just my son, but I too shared some of their genetics as well. And it was very difficult to I didn't feel like, oh, I have another mother, and I already had a mom. So I didn't feel like I needed another mother, but she just kept coming and, teaching me things. And it was a female ET, kind of like you were saying earlier, like that you had this contact with a female ET, and she was like this kind of mentor. And it was just really interesting to learn this. So they told me that my genetics are different, that there were 2 females and my dad that created me. So this hybridizing thing is in my family apparently. And I have 3 sons, and they only did this with my first son. So my other 2, I didn't have the same experience where they added the genetics like this and had that full experience. So they just kind of pick certain people from the family, I guess, that they do this with. They were teaching me a lot too. So it wasn't just this physical abduction stuff. They were constantly working with me. I was out of body a lot. So anytime they would paralyze me, I would go out of body. I would, because I always tried to fight this. I always wanted to wake up my husband to help me. I was always so afraid, and I would slip out of body, and then I would go back in. And so they wanted to keep me learning about being out of body. So I remember one time they put me into this coma state. where I couldn't get back in my body. I was forced to stay out. And they said, we want you to get used to what this is like. Yeah. And it was really weird. And then I eventually came out of it, but I felt really weird the next morning. It took a while to kind of integrate back in the body again. And
were there any telltale signs that something's going to happen before you'd leave your body, or like an event or an extraction or an abduction?
Just the paralysis that they would do every time they'd come would throw me into the out of body state too. I would get in and out of body. So there was a combination of, sometimes I would be taken or visit with them out of body. Other times I literally was paralyzed, but I would be moved. My body would be moved and pulled through the walls and, down this hallway that kind of linked up to a craft. I had that where I would see my sleeping husband, in the distance, and I would be taken, and clearly my body was there with them. So it was both. I was learning that they really understood us as a soul and a body. They really understood the three components, mind, body, soul, way better than we understand ourselves. And they were working with both. There was, and they were teaching me a lot with energy. They wanted me to learn how to use light and work with energy more too. So there was a situation where I would be in these very scary situations where I felt like I was invaded or like a negative being was around, and I would hear a voice that would say, use your light, and they said that if I just meditate on light, that we have these receptors in our brain, that when you fill your mind with light, that fills these receptors, and it can aid in healing and neutralizing negative thoughts and all this stuff. Like, we can't be in a bad mood and be depressed when we're focusing on pulling light into us, or if we go outside in the sun. And they were showing me this. So then they did this test to see how well I knew the material, I guess, or something. So one day I found myself, in fact, I was gonna just see if I can read that entry.
Sure.
Let's see, I thought I had it right here. Maybe I don't. Or I'll just tell it if I can't remember it or can't find it. I guess I might have to tell it because I thought I had it. Yeah, I went through so many things. I'm feeling a little bit unorganized now, but I'll just tell this one.
Sure.
So I found myself holding a head up of this little boy that was laying flat on this cement road or street. And he was like a little, maybe Asian, like I was in Asia or something. I don't know where I was or what I was doing there, but all of a sudden I'm just here and I'm holding this boy's head up, and his eyes are rolled back and he looks like he's dying. And I said, oh my gosh, somebody call an ambulance. This little boy something's wrong. And there's people kind of running around like they're frantic, trying to get help. And so this being says to me, use your light to heal him. You don't need an ambulance. You can heal him. And I said, no, I can't. I'm not a doctor. And I said, what's wrong with him? And they said, well, he has a blood disease and his body's not getting oxygen. So you can help him though. We taught you how to do this. And so I just put my hand over his forehead and his eyes like this. I didn't even have to touch him. And I just visualized this white light kind of as I'm being this vessel. And I directed the light to go and fill the areas of the boy where there was not enough light. So the receptors, I was asking that the receptors in his brain and his body absorb this light. And within like 20 seconds, he just sat up. He was perfectly fine. His mother was kind of in the distance, and he went running over to his mother. And I kept going, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I'm saying this to him, are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? I didn't believe it. I thought he was going to fall down again or something. And it was interesting because nobody seemed to see me when this happened. I was invisible. Nobody responded to me. The mom didn't run up and say, oh, thank you for saving my son. There was no interaction. So I'm like, I think this is kind of typical, maybe a typical situation where, when we get saved or we have an angelic helper, and perhaps normally we see it as, ET or angel comes in and helps us. But I got to help somebody in that way as an apprentice. I was in training. I wasn't even.
So I think so.
So I think that you never know, who's helping who.
Mm.
Are we just in training and ETs are saying, okay, you can do this. It was fascinating. So that was a good experience. But I don't consider myself a healer. I never really took Reiki or did anything with that. They were just opening me up more and more. They also taught me that, so they told me that that they consider hybrids a different race. They actually consider us a different race from humans. I know this sounds bizarre, but they told me that once. They showed me this picture, like a hologram of what my cells look like. And there's this nucleus in the middle, and they said that they showed me this very small secondary nucleus or something off to the side of the middle of it. And they said, well, you're not really human, they said to me, because your cells breathe differently. And I said, what do you mean my cells breathe differently? I was arguing with them. I said, no, I'm a human. I look like a human. I know I'm a human. And they were like, no, because your cells breathe differently. And your cells don't just breathe oxygen, they said. They also breathe information, where there's some kind of an opening where information can come from their location somehow. And so I've always felt like that too. And they've even kind of referred to me as like a spy for the ETs or something, where information can flow to and from. So we sort of become an intermediary of information, and eventually my life led into channeling. So
would that be the reason why experiencers get messages like telepathic stuff, or in the dream state, or are more prone to OBEs perhaps, or third eye visions, whatever?
I really think so. That's exactly what I would attribute that to. Yeah. We've all kind of been different, in that sense, and just really open to something, a higher mind portal or something where information flows that's not from here. And they said it's in our DNA. It's actually the way our cells are wired. And I wonder if this is actually a physical thing, that if the scientists really looked at that level, maybe you need a more powered microscope to see it, but if you could really look, if they would see that, or is this something on a spiritual that overlays our cells on the physical? Because I've noticed that the Greys really see us as a mind, body, soul, as a total human. They're very, very aware of reincarnation. I mean, my son reincarnated after living off planet with them for 8 years and then incarnated here. They took me back to 5 lifetimes that I had, where if it wasn't for them, there's no way I would have remembered all this. I got to relive pieces of my past lives because of them. They took me on that journey, which was incredibly empowering and eye-opening, to know the people that are in your life today, how they appeared in your past, and the significance and the karma that plays. I mean, I had the whole picture because of them. So there's so much to us that is oppressed, that we don't get to see. And when I saw these hybrid kids and how magical and amazing they are, I thought, if they're taking genetics from us and them, and they're creating this beautiful species, I thought, why is humanity not more expressive of that? They're taking our genes. And my spirit guide Melody said, well, they are. This is it. I mean, humanity is super, super incredible. And we all have these telepathic abilities and the psychic abilities and the ability to heal with light. And we are so powerful. But when we incarnate here, there's this schism that happens between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, or the subconscious and the conscious. And the schism causes us to forget. And so this subconscious mind, I almost think that it was created by some other race of beings or whatever to keep us asleep. Because when the Greys start visiting, or other people have other contact experiences, that subconscious totally opens up. Like, I could interpret my dreams. I could understand the whole picture so much better. It's like the subconscious opened up somehow. So they were bridging that for us. It was opening that up. And I think they're part of that. And the genetics helps us bridge that more, I guess. It's so hard to explain, but
okay,
I think you know what I mean.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
by adding their genetics to ours, we sort of get back what we had, or we might have lost, or what?
Um, yes,
Because
I
when you
think.
look at the first version of humans, like the old kings, when you look at the like how long their lives were, like in the old texts, well, they live, a lot longer than we did.
Hmm.
And so I'm wondering if somewhere down the road we lost something, and by adding sort of like ET genetics, we might be gaining something back. So it's just a thought.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of my experiences when I was visited by one of the hybrids, uh, I was told this more than once, but one time I remember very vividly. She stood at the end of my bed, and she said, uh, your fourth dimensional world is going to merge with our fifth dimensional world." And she was like this little 3 or 4 year old kid and held her hands out like this, but there was this super intelligence radiating from her and this glowing light. And then she could send telepathic images to me, and she showed me, because I said, "What does that mean?" And this was again back in the 90s when nobody was talking about the fifth dimension or new age. It did not exist. So I heard it from them for the first time about this merging. And she shows me that we would live side by side with the spirit world, so that you could see like your deceased ancestors, your whoever passed over before you, you would have visible conversation with them. There'd be no more separation. She showed me this real beautiful peace with like the earth. So natural disasters weren't frightening for people. If an earthquake happened, they were like rocking with it. It was just this very easy going, at one with nature. And all these UFO sightings would become more visible. So she was showing me kind of this future of what that looked like,
Oh,
this unity consciousness, this ability when you, and that's how the Greys are too, is that they understand um, the collection and how important, collective, I mean, and how important it is, for when science happens, when advancements happens, that the whole society benefits, not just the top elitists
yeah.
that got the information. And then because then it's used as a weapon. And these beings understand the collective and how everything has to work together. So she showed me this, that we were going to merge with the fifth dimension, and pretty soon more people started talking about this.
Yeah.
But so this is what this is about. This is a marriage between us and their race, and it's this beautiful group of beings that are coming here and throughout the next generations. And actually, we've been hybridized since the beginning. I mean, they know that different species have existed amongst humanity, like the I forget what they're called, but the humans and the Devisons, or oh boy, I'm so bad at remembering this stuff from anthropology, but Australopithecus and Neanderthals, and then there was one other Devisons or something.
Okay.
Somebody will know that hears this. But they were all interbreeding, different humanoids on the planet. So this is still going on. The leap that you hear about, the missing link, is real. That there has been influence genetically from us since the very beginning. So I think that just some people are just more aware from our personal experiences that this is still going on, and it is helping all of us advance. It's helping the Greys. It's helping us. This marriage is just beautiful, because I think that they like the fact that we have this super ability to be more than who we are, to create and imagine and have emotional intelligence. These are the things that the Greys, that people will say they lacked. I don't know that they lack it, but we can't perceive that from them in the way that we perceive it in each other. Emotional intelligence. They didn't really express that, because we expect empathy when we're hurt. We expect someone to talk to us at great lengths to show they care and that kind of thing. But what the Greys did to show they care they would use science. They would do things that showed me that they cared. Like before I would wake up from an abduction or, come out of the paralysis or whatever, they would have me go into a dream state and go around the side of the bed. I would dream that I'd go around the side of the bed wake my husband up and say, I just had an experience, I need to talk about it, and so they would loop this same scene about 8 times, and then I would talk about the experience in the dream, and then the Pitocin would be coming out in me, so I would start to calm down each time.
Oh.
I would tell my husband about my experience. So they would loop this until I was finally so calm enough that they then allowed me to wake up and kind of come to terms with the experience. So that was showing me that they cared, that they didn't want me to be suddenly terrified and so upset. Oh my God, I just got taken. It's horrible. So they would have me, and they would study me. Okay, how calm is she going to be if we just let her wake up now? I mean, I know they don't want to startle us and create all this fear. We have this human side. We have the animal instinct in us. The fight or flight just kicks in, and
true.
And so they got to work with that, and that's not easy. And
do you know? Did they give you a date when the 4th and 5th realities will start merging, or?
Yeah, interestingly, they were very, very concerned about Earth changes. They showed me a lot with environmental changes and different events that were going to happen. Sometimes they would take me in a group of people, and we would go to like this movie theater, and we would see things like floods and earthquakes. And it wasn't really to scare us. It was more like just to awaken us to what was coming. They were very concerned about air quality, air pollution, but not so much pollution, more maybe that, but also just the reduction in the oxygen levels that are in our atmosphere. And the more that they cut down the rainforest and all this, it depletes our oxygen, which leads to disease. So they were telling things about that. So there were some signs that they said to look out for, like they even went so far and showed me like military kicking in people's doors. I mean, this sounds really horrible and scary if I say all this, but I'm just sharing exactly what they showed me back then. And that was so far removed. I just thought, military kicking in our door here in America? What for? And they showed me this bald Chinese guy that was from Beijing, that had that was confiscating books, or that invaded America and wanted everybody's books burned. There was no internet back then when they were showing me this, but so information was being censored or taken from the people, and it was replaced with just this one book, only one book that people could read. They showed me that. They showed me this one thing where the sun, they said it like this: on Sunday the sun will turn red. And I saw this little dot in the sky that was supposed to be the sun, this red dot. They said on Monday it'll turn black. And that was it. It was just this weird message. And then it's interesting because this summer Oregon had the worst wildfires, it was just unbelievable. Literally, when you looked outside, there was a little red dot. You could stare right at the sun. It was so covered in smoke that it was this little red dot in the sky, and it looked just like that vision they showed me way back when. We actually got out of there. We drove in our car and went to another area up north in Washington. It was bad there too. But yeah, these things that they were showing me, changes with the earth. But these are man-made things. So far, all of this is man-made. And so I think them also kind of teaching me about the morals of humanity and how important it is to work as a collective is the way that out of this is the way to move outside of this. So I think that there was a double effort here. It wasn't just to create the hybrid race, and me birth my son, who's also part of that, but also the evolution of our soul and just becoming more and more spiritual individually is what I was getting from this also.
A lot of people are afraid that they're going to be replaced.
Replaced?
But with the new humans, the modified ones, the hybrids.
Oh, are they confusing that with like the AI stuff?
I don't know, but I don't think so, because they're afraid that since the hybrids are living among us, they can infiltrate and do anything. So
they're bad. They don't.
That we're going to be replaced. Like the non-telepathic humans will be replaced by the new upgrades. Or
no, I don't. Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, that's again. There is a lot of fear associated with the grays and and movies make it seem like this alien invasion. But actually, you know, and as far as free will goes, I know that I made this choice to participate in this from a soul level. So again, they look at us like mind, body, spirit, my soul, because I went back many incarnations. I relived my lives, even the one going back when I was on planet Sirius was where I lived first. And I made a decision to leave that planet and come here because they needed help. So that was my intention going back 5 or 6 lives ago. And the Orion race had invaded that planet at that time. And they were also coming, they basically followed the Syrians here and did the same thing here. So we've been at war with the same race. And now that we're experiencing this whole thing with the artificial intelligence and the vaccines and SpaceX and this whole thing is to try to keep everybody down into this pigeonhole, you know, where trying to make it very hard to break out. And it's only because the hybrids are here and they've already broken out and there's no changing that. And them being here, they're also great influencers subtly just because of their energy. They don't really have to do something but just be here because their energy, they're high vibrating. So this is all going to balance. You know, there's kind of this, we see extremes right now, but everything is going to be balanced out. And that's how I see it anyway.
So we're going to make it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to be always easy, but we've got the skills, you know, we've got our guides. And as a matter of fact, you know, from my experiences, I began to have clear audience with my spirit guide that I channel. I'm a full trance channel now that evolved from these experiences. And so that's been very helpful because I can always count on her and get guidance that way. And she tells me that we are absolutely moving into a positive ascension timeline, that all of this kind of has to fall apart first for the new to come. And then I've seen like this splitting off thing where almost like 2 Earths, you know, the frequencies will become so different. The artificial intelligent kind of mindset just won't align with the collective unified intelligence where people are being of service to others and for the good of the whole. That group is going to kind of branch off. The 2 vibrations just won't even be able to coincide. So that's what will happen is we won't experience this anymore. And that will be a full moving on into the 5th dimension at that point. They taught me the out of body stuff. They taught me how to fly, which is really interesting. So anytime like I'm in a dream state and I'm scared or, you know, people have nightmares, you're being chased or whatever, I know that if I just fly, I could just fly and ascend out of that scene. And that was really important to them that I learned how to fly and that I was comfortable out of body. So I did that a lot. I was out flying. I would oftentimes sit outside out of body on the roof and see UFOs. They would show me all kinds of displays of UFOs, and flying is the most freeing, beautiful experience. Do you ever have out of body or flying?
Yeah, I went once at least for sure. I was in the basement at my dad's house, and this was like a few weeks before getting open heart surgery. I begged them to have an OBE because I wanted to remove the fear of dying, let's say. So I wanted to see what's beyond the body. And one night I started having these pains in the bed. I was totally like paralyzed, but I felt this electricity run through my entire body, and I felt as if my soul and my body were being ripped apart. And as soon as I realize what they're doing, I say, I'm afraid. I know what you're doing. Please find another way. And as soon as I say that, in my mind, I black out, and I realize I'm in front of my bed, perhaps a white mattress, that I realize I'm going up. I don't see a body. I'm only aware that I'm seeing in front of me. And I'm going through I'm looking downwards. So I realize I'm going through the basement roof, through the ceiling of the house. This happens really quick. Then I realize I'm in orbit. And then I'm seeing these huge outdoor theaters, like cinema screens. And I'm being shown what I perceive to be images from my past or videos. I thought I was dying. So, but yeah,
life review, right?
A life review, yeah, that's what I thought it was having. Then after that, I black out, whatever, and I'm in front of this young boy with he's smiling at me, and he has rotten teeth, And he says, "Oh, you're so and so's son." My mom passed away a few years ago, and he says, "Ah, you're like," she said, she's a good person. I know where she is. Let's go and find her." And as soon as we start walking and trying to find my mom, I black out and I wake up the next morning.
Wow. Interesting.
So
Were
yeah,
you in surgery when that happened or after?
that's a bit before. I was asking to have an OBE,
Okay.
so I wanted to see it, what happens after, and I had that.
Wow. That sounds like you went through some major health stuff too. A lot of contactees have health stuff too, huh? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I had something like that. Let's see, 2017. So but I better stay in the order.
Yeah.
Okay. So, September 2010, I had a major UFO sighting. I was at a friend's house, just had to get together. They were also other experiencers that were there. And my friend said that she goes out on her back deck all the time and she summons the UFOs and she gets a playful mind and heart and she says, come out, and they come out and do displays right there. And so we're out there and I'm trying to call them. I go, okay, let's try it. And we're calling them and nothing happens. We were out there for maybe an hour, talking and trying to get the UFO's attention, and nothing happens. So I was like, oh, well, so I get in my car and I head home and I'm driving down I-5. So this was out in Beaverton. I lived in Woodburn then, I still do. And we're driving down I-5 and I'm just by myself. Sorry, it's me. I'm driving down I-5 and I see these like pulsating lights in the distance, just like this kind of pulsating. It reminds me of like a heartbeat or something. Mm-hmm. But I thought they were the towers along the road there, so the planes don't hit these towers. But I see that it's starting to move towards the road across the street there. Yeah. And I'm headed down, going about 55 miles an hour. And as I'm getting closer to this light, my van is coming right under it, and it's very slowly going across the highway, like almost like a hot air balloon speed, or a blimp. It was very slowly moving, not very fast. And as I get right under this thing, and it's about treetop height. So this is very low to the ground. It wasn't that high up, and I can see it's a perfect triangle, charcoal colored, and these pulsating lights. There were 2 red ones and 1 green one, and they were pulsating, and it goes right over the top. And I'm just, oh my gosh, I'm right under a UFO. Beautiful. As I'm driving. I couldn't pull over. I couldn't take a picture. I'm driving.
Yay.
But then what's even so bizarre, then it goes over the treetops over there, and I'm just like looking at that going, wow, I just saw a UFO. And then I look out this way and another one is coming, exactly the same as that one, and it flew exactly the same spot right over my van, timed perfectly. So I was under each one of them.
Beautiful.
And I was just amazed. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this. The first thing I want to do is grab my phone and call the friend that, that I've been friends with for the longest time, Barbara. And so I'm just about to reach for my cell phone, because this is 2010, so there's cell phones now. And the phone rings, and it's her. She's calling me instead of me even able to dial the number. And I go, Barbara, oh my gosh, I just saw the most incredible sighting. These UFOs, they were so low to the ground. I'm describing. She goes, I knew to call you. She says, I was just about to go to the bathroom, and I stood in the mirror and I just froze for a second. And I said, call Kendra. I knew to call you, but I didn't know why. And it was just so strange, the timing and everything of that whole experience. And that really showed me that they do hear us. They are telepathically connected all the time, because I was asking to have a sighting just 30 minutes before that at my friend's house. It didn't happen there, but boy, did it happen when I was headed home. It was out of this world. It was amazing. That was my closest encounter. I've had other sightings too throughout my life, but that was one that was really amazing. And then shortly thereafter, I was getting warnings from the ETs about something that was going to happen. I don't remember them saying an earthquake, but I think I knew it was, because I'll tell you why. They kept waking me up, and they kept saying, you need to store water. You need to store water. And they were urgently giving me and my husband at that time this message, my second husband, this happened around 2010. And so we're like, okay, let's store water. And they even told me how to do it. They said, boil the water first and add a little bit of chlorine, but they really wanted me to boil the water first. If we skipped that step, they would come back again and tell us to do it this correct way. And we got these drums, and we didn't have a garage in that other house. So we're just putting these drums of water on our back porch, and we just kept doing what we were told. And it was just weird. And I kept asking why, but for some reason I kept being led to the USGS, I think it's called, the website that tracks earthquakes.
Yeah, geology. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just drawn to that. I would check that website every day and this went on for about 7 months. I was preparing for something, and I even called my family members and said, hey, I said, I know I've told you the ETs talked to me, and because I told my brother and my mom, and they weren't continuing to have experiences, so they probably thought think I'm a little loopy or weird. But I said, they've been telling me to store water. I think we need to store water and food. Something's going to happen mid-March. They keep saying mid-March, and I felt the urgency to tell everyone I knew. So they started storing food and water. And so I kept checking that USGS, I'm sorry, I forget the name of it, that website. And the day that Fukushima happened, I saw it before it even was announced in the news. I had checked on that website right before, and I saw it first recorded like a 7.2 earthquake.
Okay.
I said, wow, that's a really big earthquake. And I saw it was in Japan. And then it went up to like 8 point, and then it went up to like 10 point. And I go, oh my gosh. And I could see them changing it. And then a few minutes after I had just seen it on that website, my sister-in-law calls and she says, Kendra, have you looked on the news? And I said, no. She says, there's a tsunami that just happened in Fukushima, and it's terrible. And I turned on the news and I saw that damage. And then there was a warning that it was going to come in, to our area, to Oregon. So Oregon got this warning that the tsunami might be so bad, everybody be ready, kind of thing. So we're right on the same ring of fire that Japan has over here in Oregon. So the ETs knew about this at least 7 months before it happened. They knew the approximate time. They just didn't know the aftermath,
Okay.
who it would all affect, but they were absolutely preparing us for that. It was pretty amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. So then, I received the 7 principles of I am. So I had other contact experiences. You remember I was talking as a child with that big light that came and gave me that message.
Yes.
In my room. And so that same being continued to visit me. He came one day into my room and woke me up and gave me the 7 principles of I am. And he says, you're going to want to write this down. These are going to become chapters in a book that you're going to finish writing. Because I was working on notes and I thought I'd write a book. But anyway, he gave me these 7 principles. And he said, when you wake up in the morning, all the notes you've taken are going to make sense. And you'll have 7 chapters for a book. You'll finish this book. And I was like, really? Okay. So I wrote them all down and put this book together. And so it was channeled information. And every time I went to my computer to start writing information for the 7 principles, he would come through and I would just start typing what I was hearing. So I had this channeling experience with what I call the voice of creation. I don't know what else to call that experience, but I was beginning to channel then with that information and more with Melody. I had a trans channel relationship with her. I later found out that she's actually the mother I kept telling you or having experiences with in the beginning. She's actually the genetic the ET mother that hybridized me, I guess I should say. Melody is.
So she's one and the same. Is that what you're saying?
Well, she's like, I guess like an ET mother. It's just weird to call her a mother because I have a mother, but genetically, I have her genetics. So when they hybridized me, have some of her genetics. She's fifth dimensional, so she's with the hybrid race, but she's not in a physical body at this time. She's mentioned that she's in a spirit body, but light body, and she links to the collective, the fifth dimensional collective. So she and I have this relationship to just, she can use my vessel to give information as it's needed and that kind of thing. So it evolved into this channeling thing is what happened. So in 2017, so it was about a year after I wrote my book, because my book was published in 2016. But 2017, I started to have these health problems, strange symptoms, like I would get very, very thirsty, started feeling weak and tired, and dizzy. I got vertigo, and I had this weird sensation in my head, like, I don't know, it's hard to describe, like a vibration. Or so I checked with Melody, and I said, I'm feeling strange. Is everything okay? Something wrong? And she kind of scans my body, and she comes back and says to me, well, there's something wrong with your kidneys. They're not performing correctly, she tells me. And so I was like, okay. And I didn't think much of it. But then that night, she brings some ETs to me. So it must have been important what she discovered. And two taller grays, they were about 5 feet tall, came and they did a surgery on my left kidney. And I sent you an image of that in the email.
Yes. Yep.
Of that incision and stuff. So I was laying on my side, and I'm paralyzed. And there, I could see the two female ETs that were there that were performing the surgery. They said, we're going to do a little surgery on you. Don't worry, it'll be okay. And as I'm looking at the wall in my room, I see there's a screen that appears, like a TV screen. And it sounds really crazy, but they had SpongeBob playing, like a clip from SpongeBob. So I'm watching the ocean waves. And
amazing.
Patrick is this pink character. So these bright colors, and familiar images was helping calm me, because I was very scared of all this. I don't do well with medical stuff anyway. Yeah. Doctors, I avoid them and stuff. Yeah. Big chicken that I am. But so I'm distracted with the SpongeBob scenery, and I felt all this heat. I just remember the heat that happened. It didn't take very long. I don't know how long time-wise, but it didn't seem that long. I was fully awake during the whole procedure, and then that was it. And then next thing, I woke up in the morning and looked in the mirror, and I saw the incision. I sent a picture of that. Yeah. It's probably about 2 inches. And then you could see that it was like mild burns, I guess, on my back, where you could see these red little lines. Yeah. I used all this heat. Yeah. Wow. So maybe to speed the healing process up. I'm not sure what that is, but there was definitely physical evidence. I asked Melody what was wrong, and then she sent these two guys to help me. So it was just really incredible to have all that happen. And she said, I said, well, what? Then I asked her later, well, what? They came, they did surgery. What happened? She says, well, you had a lesion on your left kidney, and we removed it. And I was like, oh, thank you. That's wonderful. Well, I continued to have symptoms, though. But going forward a little bit, there was another surgery that happened shortly thereafter. I don't know how long after, maybe like a month after that one, I was taken again. Only this time I could not remember the abduction. I just had missing time that was like an hour and 45 minutes of missing time, because I woke up, looked at the clock, it was like 2:15, went downstairs to get a drink of water, and it was like 4:30. So it was very odd. And I always remember stuff. Plus, I had this horribly sore bridge of my nose. It was just very painful and bright red, like you could tell something happened. And I had just been sleeping. So what could have happened? So I knew. I said something happened. And I asked Melody, I believe, and she said, yeah, there was a surgery that was done. But I had a friend who's a hypnotherapist, and I wanted to be regressed. Okay. So I said, let's get together. And he did. He regressed me. And then I remembered the full situation where I was taken. There were 3 ETs. They were male ETs, also about 5 foot tall, grays. And they put something over my face here, like a triangle. And then they got into this part of my nose, and they said it's because there was a skin cancer. that was growing there that had started to go deep into the bone, and they had to actually go into that bone area to remove it all. So I was getting all this help with these surgeries, but the way I was taken, it was so abrupt, and so I was shaking so much during that hypnosis. Once I got on the craft and I was with these three beings, I was fine, but the energetic experience of moving from this dimension or this physical world into that craft was so rough on me. I shook. I had, not the trauma, it was a physical roughness about it. You know, it just like my body trying to deal with the changes of this from this world to that one was really hard. So I think that it was that going through that hypnosis that caused my health to decline from that point, because the next day I started having some really bad symptoms after that.
Wow.
So I think there was a reason why I wasn't allowed to remember that.
I see.
And I opened it up, and then that caused all kinds of problems. So I that next day I went outside to garden, and all of a sudden my legs gave out on me. I felt like the battery drained. I couldn't even walk anymore. I was starting to get tunnel vision, like I was going to pass out. I was having all these weird symptoms, and my thirst just kept getting more and more intense. And I went to the doctor and thought I might have diabetes, and they ran all these tests and they found nothing, just everything looked normal. And I'd feel okay for a day, and then the next day I wanted to get up out of bed to use the bathroom, and I couldn't even stand. So I had to be transported to the hospital. I was bedridden for 3 days in the hospital, could not even stand. My heart and blood pressure was just all off the charts. I mean, it couldn't regulate. So I had like this what do they call it? Autonomic failure, where the central nervous system just isn't working properly. The blood pressure wasn't regulating.
Autonomic.
Thank you.
Autonomic, yeah.
Autonomic. Thank you. That's the word. Yeah, it's hard to say that. For me. Yeah. So that was that happened, and they ran all these tests. Nothing. They couldn't find anything. But so then I went to see my general practitioner, who is very intuitive. He's also a psychic healer type of person, but he was an MD too. So went and saw him, and he immediately said to me, well, this sounds like it's your kidneys. Immediately labeled kidney. And I never told him about the surgery that I had or what Melody said. He doesn't know anything about that. But when he said that, I thought, okay, I need to open up a little bit and tell him. I felt like I could trust him with my experience, thank goodness, because I wanted him to treat the condition correctly and give him as much information as I could. So I told him about it, and he was very open and believed me. And so I went to an endocrinologist at that point, and it was interesting because when they took the blood and all that stuff and did all these tests, she said that what they found was my DHEA and androgens, or certain adrenal hormones, were way, way high, super high, but none of the other things like the cortisol, like if I had Addison's or these other diseases, they would have had other things. So she thought, well, it sounds like you might have a tumor in your kidney, the same thing that the ETs removed, you know? And so they do the ultrasound, and they look, and there's no tumor. But my body was acting like it had one, and it was still recovering.
That's right. Yeah.
So.
Have you ever physically been entered into a craft?
Yeah. Many times. Yeah. A lot of times when they take me that I was, it was interesting because when you leave this plane or this physical existence to go there, they have to do something with our body to move us through matter, through the wall, because they would take me right through the wall. Okay. And I remember that once I would get out in that area, at first I would just immediately be back in my bed. Like I was like, wait, something happened. I'm taken. And then I don't remember that. And then boom, I'm back in bed. So it took me a while. I would have to lay there when I first wake up and kind of go, and then the memory would start coming, I'd have to try to work at it.
So there was missing time. That's why you were, well, you went through whatever wall, you blacked out, and then you were brought back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, for the thing with the nose. Yeah, that was just, yeah, for that one with that surgery, I just remember looking at my phone. It was like 2:15. I don't remember feeling pain on my nose, but then all of a sudden I go downstairs and I'm like, my nose really hurts. What's going on? And I get a drink of water and it's a different time. And I have this new injury. So that was kind of a different experience. I was really blocked from that one. And looking back, I know that was to protect me, that I should not have opened that door and went through that hypnosis.
I've been through a lot of amazing stuff too. That the fact that you're having a to and fro conversation is amazing, because a lot of experiencers don't remember anything. They know they've been through something. Some have missing time, but for you to have a genuine conversation with an ET is quite astounding.
Oh, yeah. Some other people told me that before too, that having the total recall is unusual. And I think it's because I'm just so hungry for knowledge. I'm somebody that even if something scares me to death, I would rather know exactly what's happening, why it's happening than avoid it. I just want to know everything. And I've had this hunger like this ever since I was a kid. I'd always ask why and how come. And so I pressed on with that attitude, I think, with the ETs. And I think that's why they were so open. I think it has to do with us, like how much we're willing to, awareness we want. And I think they work with that. Because if we're scared and we want to distance ourselves, they won't push that. And
so, yeah, we've been at this for almost 2 hours now. No, time sure went quick. And you thought we were going to do like, we need at least 3 hours to do this, and you were all panicking. And
yeah, I know. I always get nervous easily. And I wanted to make sure that I could explain. And it's a hard thing to talk about because it's so foreign and you don't know how to even communicate some of this stuff. It's taken a long time, but I hope that, me sharing the totalness of this, the physical aspects, which were traumatic, as well as what is learned along the way. I hope that people will have a better feeling about the Greys and not think they're all bad or they're all working for the military, because I've heard some bad things that way from people. And I understand that perspective. I understand the fear very well. But I think sometimes we try to lock things into a pigeonhole where, we tend to label something as all bad if we hear one bad experience. And there's something bigger going on here, something very important. I feel like it's what we're participating in is one of the most important projects that there is. I mean, bringing in new civilization that's more evolved, that's works from the heart and more collective. Yeah, I mean, we need this. I mean, humanity is, if we keep going down as we are through a selfish mentality and feeling powerless against those that have power and all this power struggle that we have now, it's not good for us or the earth or anything.
So thank you so much for coming on, Kendra. I love your story.
Thank you so much, Yannick. It's so much fun talking to you and sharing all that.
You guys are my people, and it's so fun. So yeah, to those who had the pleasure of watching today's interview, I hope you enjoyed it. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Gray, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.